Earning Curve. The Earning Curve is a new platform in webinars and different from other webinars you may have attended in the past. We let all of you drive the panel and ask the questions. My name is Marianne Biangardi, and I'm the head of business development at Schmershel, Treloar & Company. We're an accounting firm here in St. Louis. Today's topic is raw material price management for CPG companies. We will be discussing how raw material costs have escalated into a significant threat to profitability. Our experts will share their perspectives on how you can manage these threats as material costs continue to rise. Since all of you drive the panel, we need you to help us out and send us your questions. You can find the way to send the chat questions through the thought bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and type those questions in and we will get them answered. Today, our panelists, we'll start with our anchor panelist, Mark Bowers. Welcome, Mark. Mark is the founder of St. Louis Makes, a nonprofit manufacturing organization here in St. Louis. Mark Bowers is a business owner himself. He has over 20 years of experience in new product development, product management, and business development. Fun fact about Mark, he can cook minute rice in under 57 seconds. And he's also traveled exclusively through Europe, and he's growing his hair out, which looks really awesome. Derek Winters, welcome, Derek. Derek's our next panelist. Derek is the VP of Sales for Willert Home Products, a leader in household consumer products like Tidy Bowl, Enos, and Air Boss. Derek has he's begun his career at Centeret Chemical Company, working in sales, marketing, and new product development on insect and animal control brands like Taro and Sweeney's. He's a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, with a degree in economics and international affairs. Fun fact, he's married with 3 kids, and he's an NCAA ice hockey official and referee. Welcome, Derek. Dan is up next, Dan Abel. Dan, welcome, Dan. Dan is the Chief Executive Officer, or the Chief Chocolate Officer, I should say, at Bissinger's Handcrafted Chocolatier and the Vice President of Chocolate Company in St. Louis. After years of studying the art of handcrafting premium chocolates, Dan came back to his hometown of St. Louis to open his first chocolate company with his wife, Rosalie. And the store is owned and operated by Dan and his wife and his 3 kids. Fun facts about Dan: he loves spending time with his family, playing golf, practicing woodworking, smoking cigars, drinking bourbon, and of course, making and eating chocolate. Next up is Jim Gorzika. Jim is the owner and president of O'Fallon Brewery in Maryland Heights, Missouri. With the brewery location, within the brewery location, he's created and manages O-Bar, a tap room with a full lunch and dinner menu. Jim is a former AB marketing executive where he was focused on value brands and trade marketing, and he now serves as the Chief Financial Officer for Schlafly Bottle Works in Maplewood, Missouri. Jim has graduated from the University of Missouri Columbia, and a fun fact about Jim is that he owns a brewery, so he has fun all the time. Before we open it up to your questions, I want to ask Mark Bowers a starter question as the lead panelist. And after Mark responds, I would welcome all the other panelists to go ahead and add their comments as well. So Mark, you work with manufacturing companies all the time, all the business owners. Are the costs that are driving these increases as simple as just one issue? Or are there multiple issues? Who is this impacting? Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. A couple of things. One thing that I wanted to throw in before we get going, St. Louis Makes is doing our first in-person networking event tomorrow night at O'Fallon Brewery. If only I knew how to reach Jim. Oh, look, there he is. So for anyone that is interested, be at O'Fallon Brewery tomorrow at 5:30 in the afternoon. We're going to spend a couple hours there. Everybody is on their own for food and drink. The food and drink is awesome. You guys will have a great time, and we're going to get a little spiel and a little peek behind the curtain from Jim and his team. So it's going to be a fantastic evening. So I encourage everybody to meet us out there in Westport at O'Fallon Brewery, and we hope to see everyone at 5:30 tomorrow night. So that was the answer to the question that you didn't ask. The answer to the question that you did ask is that I don't think that most people realize that when you look at supply chains and all of the inputs, you think of it like a funnel or a V on its side. You know, to get to one price for one component that goes into a consumer packaged good, there are all of these other factors that come into play. And transportation and fuel costs and all of these other costs are certainly a component and a part of that. And I think that what you're seeing right now is a lot of cost increases that look like it's this ingredient or that ingredient that in reality have a lot of uncertainty that underlie them, and that's really what's driving them. So the answer to your question is, yeah, it's driven by a lot of different factors, a lot of different inputs, you know, and a lot of uncertainty that we still have in the manufacturing supply chain. So I don't know, maybe we could kind of start with that, and you know, I mean, if you don't mind, you know, maybe we could bounce around. We'll start with Derek, and then go to Jim and to Dan, and get some perspective on how you guys have been affected by that, and anything that I might have missed in there. I'm going to mute too, by the way, per Marianne's reco here, and we'll go to Derek.
Yeah, and, thanks, Mark. We've kind of managed it a bunch of different ways. Yeah, there's a lot of inflation in the marketplace, especially with raw materials. We're taking a hard look at, you know, who's kind of long-term partners, who's long-term contracts. And then again, we're just, you know, COVID has been an interesting time for consumer preferences, to say the least. So we're looking at other potential options that maybe we can do a shift on a product or an item that still, you know, serves the customer and the consumer's need, but it's functionally a different product, or it's in a different form factor, or comes from a different country, or it's made domestically. So we've tried to be really nimble and flexible, and so far it's kind of served us, I think, pretty well. But I'd love to hear kind of Jim and Dan's thoughts on that as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Jim. I too want to welcome everyone tomorrow night to the O-Bar. It should be a fun event. I've recently joined the group, so it's going to be new for me, but Mark and Marianne will help lead us through, and you know, I'm sure it's going to be great and a lot of fun. We're going to give everybody a tour of the brewery, and hopefully everybody gets a chance to ask questions about making beer if they're interested in that. Just to add to what Derek had to say, I think too, we are feeling the pressure of increased costs on all hands. We do from the restaurant with foodstuffs, and also in the brewery with raw materials. And one of the things that we haven't touched base on yet is just the availability of labor. As Derek said, everybody's coming out of COVID, but there's still a COVID hangover, if you want to call it that. I think there's workers who are uncertain about coming back to work. There's also workers who have enjoyed some time away and are still trying to spend time with family and enjoying the time off that they got used to. And that's hard for them to get back into the workforce. And then lastly, because workers are, you know, there's not as the worker pool is smaller, are limited, those folks who are out there who are able to spend more on workers are doing it. So it's naturally raising the wage, which is making getting workers even harder. And just like people now are having hard times finding homes in the marketplace, I think employers are having a hard time finding workers, because those workers are shopping wage rates and looking for the best possible increase they can get before they decide to go back into the workforce. So there's a lot of challenges, not only on the supply side from material cost push, but also on getting workers and getting workers who are committed to staying in the role. Dan, I'll pass along to you.
I think all of Jim's comments are very accurate, starting with the O-Bar and the brewery is outstanding. And I would highly recommend a couple of O'Fallon's beers. You know, we're finding that a box of chocolates, depending on the brand, depending on the product, could take 40 to 50 to 60 components. Part of that components is packaging, which we have made domestically. We made that switch a couple years ago for most of our packaging. The other part of it are some specialty ingredients that we get from Europe. Bissinger's, for example, it's a French company that was in France for a couple hundred years, and they came over to the United States in the mid 1800s. We still hold true to the recipes and techniques of the Bissinger family, having the chocolate actually made in Europe, having some of the ingredients made in Europe. And so right now I have 2 containers coming over from Europe that are sitting in port, and they were supposed to arrive middle of May. One of them has 40,000 pounds of dark chocolate on it. One of them has 28,000 pounds of milk chocolate. So I will have quite a bit of chocolate in my warehouse at my disposal for me to run fall production. We just don't know when it's going to come in. Normally that's a 2 to 3 week lead time, and we're pushing about a 7 or 8 week lead time. So not only are we dealing with a delta of time that we've never seen before, freight costs in some cases have gone up 100%. There's a product, a pallet of specialty glacé fruit that we bring in from France. And the other day I just got the bill this morning, $3,700 in freight cost. In December of 19, it was about $1,100. And we're comparing apples to apples. And so nothing has changed. The weight of the product hasn't changed. We're not asking for a faster delivery. We're going through the same supply chain channel as we did before. And so within, just 6 months now, we're talking about a 3x to get a refrigerated pallet from France to the United States, because that goes through, air, water, and sea, basically, just to get everything over to us. So, and then labor as well. I mean, we always feel that raising employees is a great personal feeling when we raise employees, because we feel that means that they deserve to be paid more due to their efforts. And so we've always been a performance pay company, and our dollar per hour goes up if you come in and work hard and show up and have dedication to the company. Then you're going to continuously start doing well right away. We're finding that we have to start our base minimum much higher now, and then add still raise the people that matter. So we have gone through now, in just a 12-month period, we're going through a $2 an hour raise across the board. And so if that means the bottom salary raises $2 an hour, we raise the top salary as well. And so imagine $2 or $1, well, I'll say $2 an hour at a 40-hour week is about $4,000. And if you multiply $4,000 times 80 full-time employees that we have, you can see we're talking about several hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost. And so, chocolate is not nearly as profitable as beer. So where does that come from? And so we have to analyze on how we, what we're going to be charging this fall for the product. And there's going to be some price increases because of that. How the pack size is, instead of a 30-piece, do we do a 28-piece box? So you're still getting that $40 box of candy. It just has 2 pieces. So all of those are some pretty hard decisions we're making right now, because we absolutely hate price increases. One is we don't like to have our consumer pay more for it, and 2, it's to update retail stores and catalogs and websites and price lists. I mean, it's tens, not maybe hundreds of hours in the back end, updating everything across the board and making sure it's streamlined. Because when we get to holiday, it's all hands on deck, and we fill up. Just for Bissinger's alone, we usually fill up a UPS trailer every day, and then we get busy and we fill up 2. And those are boxes that are about this big. So it adds up to quite a bit of volume, and we have to make sure all of our ducks are in a row.
That's really interesting. So when I got out of business school, I started as a consumer packaged goods product manager and was in New York City with Colgate-Palmolive, and was there, 2 decades ago. And during the time that I was there, we never saw the kind of uncertainty and the kind of huge increases and huge wait times that we're seeing now. I mean, they affect everybody up and down the supply chain. The question that I have for you guys, and maybe we'll go backwards this time and start with Dan and go to Jim and then Derek. So how does this, what we're experiencing now, how does this compare versus anything historically that you've experienced, number one? And then as a sort of component to that, what does this look like in terms of predictability? And what I mean by that is this just specific products or raw materials that you're seeing challenges on, or is it 1 week one thing, the next week something entirely different? In other industries, I've seen that it seems to be a little bit more across the board. And I think one of the concerns that has been expressed to me on a number of occasions by people is that lack of predictability. There's not really a pattern, other than the fact that there are going to be shortages and there are going to be increases and there are going to be time increases as well, cost increases and time increases. People can't narrow it down and say, oh, it's this one thing, and we can convince ourselves that in 3, 4, 5 months that's going to end and we'll get back to normal. What are you seeing in food specifically, and what do you think normal is going to be, maybe 6 months or a year out?
We're finding that the uncertainty is frightening right now. I mean, there was in the month of May, I feel like every day I walked into the building and a new supplier dropped a new bomb on me of some catastrophe that's going to affect, whether that's the catalog, whether it's going to affect our wholesale operation. And it seems like it's cooled off, not because things are getting better, because I think every single supplier has gone through with me and given me the bad news, and now we're just out of suppliers to tell us bad news. And so I think we're just used to it. Things I have been desperate for things, from whether it's fruit that we dip in chocolate to chocolate bar boxes to film to, and I have been in situations where I was like, hey, we will, they say, oh, we can't get it for 4 weeks, and it normally takes 1 week. And I'll say, why don't I prepay and send, I'll wire you the money so there's no terms and you have the money tomorrow, thinking that might put me in the front of the line or help. And their response is still, it's 4 weeks because we just do not have people to come into our plants and help make this product. And so what I'm trying to have some deeper conversations with other suppliers and why we're getting let down. And it seems that in my industry, at least, the sum of everything is labor. The paper company doesn't have enough employees to make the components. That paper company goes to the box company to make the boxes. So they're short of me on boxes, because not that, they might be short on people too, but until they get the paper, they can't make the box. Until they get the box, until I get the box, I can't pack the box. Until I can't, and so it's this entire chain that's falling apart because there's a labor shortage. We have been on this aggressive hiring surge, and it's been successful. We've brought on some great people here. We're very excited. We still need to bring a few more on, but we were like 12 short a month ago, and now we're only 1 or 2 short. And so we're very happy with its progress. It took, typically it takes to hire 10, you interview 20. To hire 10, we probably interviewed 200. And when I tell that statistic to people, they're like, well, how'd you find the 200 to start with? So it just seems that, we're even lucky with those numbers. But it is definitely, my hope, and I know Jim was saying this a little bit more too, my hope is that as people feel, because a lot of people that we interviewed and, when we sent out job posts, a lot of people said that they would be comfortable starting in June or starting in July. And we started kind of responding to it and say, what's going on? What's that? Because normally you put a job post out and it's starting, the maximum start date would be 2 weeks from, when you hire them, to give if you have another employee. And so we're finding that a lot of people are saying, well, my kids have been on virtual learning. We're going to go through the summer. So then when they finally go back to school, I'll be able to come back to work. Or I'm going to get the vaccine in middle of May or June. Then I figure I'll wait 2 weeks before, coming back. And then I'll be comfortable. Or just I've been out, I haven't been working for a while. I want to start somewhere part-time, then come back. So, all of these factors. So the hope is that, the whole industry will get people back to work at the levels of 2019. But we're not there yet. And I jokingly say this at the office a lot. 2020 was an easier year. And if we all remember how bad 2020 in comparison was easier to maneuver than 2021, because when we were hiring last year and we had people that we were able to hire a little bit easier, and we didn't have the supply chain issue because we were a business that was operating. So suppliers were eager to, we had, the packaging companies that are maxed out and going 8 to 10 week delays of today. A year ago when I called them, they're like, sure, we'll have it tomorrow, because they could just turn on a machine and run it. So from supply chain, it was a lot smoother last year.
When do you see that ship stabilizing across the board?
It's hard to tell, because I only think in my industry, we basically, we go on a massive surge of Christmas, Valentine's, and Easter. So it goes from, from September, we start the Christmas fall production, and then September, October, November, December, January, February, March. And then Easter, depends when Easter is, from March over. We were really struggling January, February, March, because we were very busy. We were lucky to be busy. We had, orders going out bigger than I've ever seen. I think, businesses and everything starting to reopen. And supply chain was just falling apart that I've never seen before. Right after Easter was over, our business, we're like the ice cream industry in a way, where 75 or even 80% of our business is Christmas, Valentine's, and Easter. So now it's, May, June, July, August, September, those 6 months of the year are 20% of our business as far as what we're selling and collecting money on. So we're pushing supply chain and ordering, so like a chocolate bar box, it doesn't go bad. Milk goes bad. So we have obviously some raw materials where we're going out and looking at not a 2-month forecast or a 3-month forecast. We're looking at 6-month and 8-month forecast. And we're buying it now and we're putting it in our warehouse. So our inventory dollars are up about 175% of what they were a year ago. And it's costing money, but it will cost us a lot more money when we don't have the components. So that's kind of my fix to supply chain right now, as we're not using, as demand is down, just as typical of the chocolate industry. We're just buying as much as we can of stuff that doesn't have shelf life, which is boxes and film and wrapping paper and bows, so that we have it, and then we go buy the perishable items closer to.
One follow-up question, and we'll bounce to Jim. Is this something that you see as a one-time investment in supply chain? So I guess when I ask that, I'm thinking, is this a correction to just-in-time inventories, which had been shaved so lean across all supply chains, all components, that obviously there wasn't a great deal of ability to absorb hiccups? Is this like a one and done? Hey, we're going to be 175 up, and that's the way it's going to be going forward. But once we get used to that, it's not like it's going to increase by an additional 175. We're just basically building buffer into the supply chain.
Great question. So two answers to that. Number one is we have invested about $40,000 this year in some new tooling to extend our brand portfolio across multiple suppliers. And so, for example, the Bissinger's gift box, there's 3 different sizes. Each size is about $3,000 to $5,000 of tooling and plate charges. We've had all of our boxes were made in one supplier, and so I added a second supplier this year because the primary supplier can't keep up. And so now we have 2 suppliers making the Bissinger's gift boxes, and that was a very expensive undertaking to buy plates. And so there has been a major one-time investment across the board so we can expand our supply network. And so instead of getting all of our components from 1 or 2 suppliers, we're spreading that out. On the flip side, the way we run our business is anything that we go through a lot of volume. So chocolate bar boxes, film, chocolate, sugar, we have that contracted on blanket orders. And so typically, for example, like milk chocolate at chocolate company, milk chocolate, we have our recipe blended in it's 50,000 pound batches at a time. And so the way it works is, we go through quite a bit of chocolate, and so 50,000 pounds, in some months may last us 1 month, and some months may last us 2 to 3. And so, being that the product has an 18-month shelf life from the day it's manufactured, we can get ahead. So we book a year contract, and they make 50,000 pounds, and then I bring in every Tuesday, I bring in 8,000 pounds. So they make 50, I bring in 8, 42,000 left, and since it's my recipe, no one else can buy it. And so I know that. So I always know I have this cushion. So it's just in time inventory for me, but the cushion is with the manufacturer because they have the inventory for me. Same with my boxes. I buy a year supply of boxes. And so if we have a unique situation where a huge grocery store chain is about to pull the trigger on a huge order, and I have those boxes sitting in a warehouse, and so we're just going to pull them, and the length of time for them to get to me is just a truck. Well, what is challenging this year is that back stock that I'm talking about, that year supply or 6-month supply, it doesn't exist right now. And that's what's terrifying me. And I still have those contracts in place, and I still have those relationships with these suppliers, but they're basically producing at a just-in-time inventory to me because they can't keep up. So they're not building So right now, there's no safety stock anywhere except for a couple components. And so that's why we're just trying to fib the forecast and overbuy, so then their just in time can transfer to us. If that all makes sense.
Makes a great deal of sense. It's frightening, but it makes a great deal of sense, and I appreciate that, Dan. Thank you very much. Jim, before I forget what those questions were, if we could bounce to you for the same questions, and then we'll continue to make the rounds.
We also have one audience question too that we probably need to get in. So whenever you're done answering that, Jim, I'll ask this.
Okay, thanks, Marianne.
Huh?
I just want to jump in right where Dan left off. I think there's also a loss in confidence from our perspective, and that's the reason we're buying more materials than we typically could. The confidence is that it won't be there when you need it. And so what we tend to do then is hoard materials, not by choice, but to ensure that you can keep that product line moving freely without any holdups. And as Dan alluded to as well, you could only miss one item and that would keep your product from reaching the marketplace. So we too are grabbing as much material, raw material as we can. And for us, that's packaging. Aluminum cans have been on the short for a long time now, and we're getting as much aluminum as we can. And we know that we'll end up using it when we get to it. I think that this will probably level out in 12 to 24 months, but I don't see anything happening within 2021. Maybe by the end of 2022, we'll get back to smooth sailing. But for the time being, we have to get materials when we can, and when we get them, we're getting as much as we can buy.
I was on a panel recently with the St. Louis Fed, and somebody said they expected to see this stabilized by the end of this year, and I think the snickering was audible. I'm inclined to agree with you. I don't think 21 or 22 are going to approach anything even remotely looking normal or stable. I'm thinking of sort of like what that looks like visually as you were talking, and if the pendulum, so we had all of these, we as an industry had all of these consultants in that came in and convinced us that they were smarter than we were and talked to us about how you could get supply chain down to just in time, and just in time was going to be measured by, I'll jokingly say seconds, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So all of the buffers came out, and what we effectively did was we created sort of like the F1 equivalent for supply chain. Moved really, really, really quickly. What we forgot was that if you put a speed bump in front of an F1, it's going to go flying right into the stands. The reality is that we took all of the buffers out, and now we're sitting there confused because all of these people that were so supposedly so smart making these solutions, we're kind of going, okay, what about the buffers? Do you think that when we do get to that 18 to 24 month period going forward, that we're going to see greater buffers come back in, or are we going to become the victims of ourselves again and just get right back to, everything being just on time down to the second?
Well, I think that those of us who've lived through it will operate a little bit differently than we have in the past. We're always going to have something that mitigates our risk. And so that probably means carrying a bit more inventory than we normally did before. And keep in mind that for our businesses, which with Dan and I are smaller businesses, there's also other limitations. We have limitations on space. We have Dan and I both have a product that has a shelf life to it. So those are some concerns as well. And then you just have to work within those means that you have. Money's always an issue too, right? Cash flow. So there's only so many materials you can buy before it starts impacting other pieces of your business. So I think that we'll keep those things in mind, but more so, Mark, what I mentioned is just ensuring that you're not so lean that one stick in the spokes could throw the whole thing over. So the goal is to keep your supply to for us from wholesaler to retailer to consumer going smoothly, and that might mean keeping a few more boxes of material in your warehouse.
So I had to smile for a couple of reasons there. I was thinking that as we talk about hoarding, I've decided that henceforth that will be known by me as the Chipmunk Strategy. It just sounds like a chipmunk just loading up those cheek pouches. They don't need it. They're going to go bury it somewhere. They're going to store it, but they're going to, I mean, I totally get what you're doing, and I totally get why chipmunks do that. And then the other thing that I thought, and this was, I thought it was funny. You guys might not think it was quite as funny, but I thought, in the case of beer and chocolate exclusively, you guys could store some stuff over at my place as long as you're willing to accept some shrinkage. Some
Yeah.
unexplainable shrinkage, maybe an occasional case or so that disappears. Those are pretty good products, but that's just my, that's my volunteer to be a good Samaritan to the industry. Marianne, I'll let you hit with some questions here.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So we have an audience question, a couple of them actually. When do you feel that things will revert to a business as usual state? I came in late to the conversation and just wondering, what do you feel is the driving labor shortage? And does that labor shortage extend to varied management positions?
Should I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd be happy to jump in. I think that the hope is that in 2022, unless some crazy variants of COVID come back, I think that in 2022, maybe the labor shortages should smooth out. I haven't seen certain sectors of labor, like we have, a warehouse team, we have a manufacturing team, we have a part-time retail team, a full-time retail team, and then we have layers of management. Most of my problems have been on the labor shortage of actually in production and packaging. So we've been very blessed to keep our management team sound. We just opened up a Bissinger's at the St. Louis Galleria, and we were able to hire and bring on some really good people in a very short amount of time and get them trained quickly in the retail side. I'm in full-time as well. So I think that the labor shortage is not everywhere or in all categories, but I'm hoping with the extra unemployment bump that just ended on June 12th in the state of Missouri, along with kids going back to school, along with daycare, for example, has been in shortened hours. Daycare's also, like my situation, daycare, they need to hire a few people. So once they can get more people, more caregivers hired, then they can extend the daycare hours. And so all of these factors, I think, just need, as they smooth out, we're hoping that in 2022, it gets back to a somewhat normal. But I think that it's unrealistic to expect that the labor force is going to continue to be at the 2019, even first part of 2020 labor rates. And so we're just expecting that, our starting now is fairly close at the basic entry level wage is getting much closer to a $15 an hour minimum. And we just need to continue to adjust and bring that in tune to the new reality of that.
Derek, are you seeing labor shortages?
Yeah, we have significant labor challenges as well, especially in a production environment. I know Dan kind of touched on this, but kind of the inflationary wage period, just kind of around the whole marketplace has been really, really challenging. Fortunately for us, we've kind of invested a lot in equipment and capital expenditures, which we've been able to kind of alleviate from a production side. But no, we're just having a hard time getting people trained, getting products out the door. We still have a heightened demand. So yeah, labor's been a constant challenge for us as well.
Thanks, Derek. We do have another question in here, and thank you, Dan, earlier for the answer to the other question. How does the supply chain problems and labor shortages affect those companies that operate on a just-in-time supply parameter?
Well, I don't think you can do that right now. I think that you have to throw it out the window. Actually, Christmas time of last year, I had a supplier from the bourbon industry come up, and from Kentucky, he met with me, and he said to me, he says, "Mark my words," he said, "go and take every single dollar you can get for your business and go buy every material you have." He goes, "It is going to be a really bad year." And this was in December, and I said, really? I said, my chocolate is flowing, my contracts, my sugar's coming in fine, packaging is coming in fine. I said, I think it's just, maybe it's your industry. Maybe it's, and he looked at me, he says, Dan, he goes, I'm going to take every profit I have from this Christmas and go buy materials for the next 6 months. And, I talked to him the other day, I was like, you are a genius. And so I think that from 2020, everyone should learn to wash their hands for 20 seconds. And I think from 2021, everyone should learn to be a little bit more looser with supply chain requirements. And then when things happen on time, you pat yourself on the back, because I think we're not going to be coming back to normal for a little.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, your friend is really smart, whoever you talk to. That's so true. Yeah, every industry that I've talked to, everybody's just, it's short everywhere. So we have one more question here. To what extent can you buy and store production supplies, such as packaging, wrapping, etc., or spend on any level of OPEX before you start running into the cash flow constraints, especially if you are short on receiving the actual product supply?
That's going to depend on the company, the industry. There are a lot of factors. That's going to be a uniquely different situation, I would imagine, for anybody that's, it's basically anybody. It's going to be very case by case.
Yeah, and I think it's a risk level that, as Mark says, every customer should analyze. Don't go beyond your comfort level. We operate for the majority of the year on cash flow, and then the minority of the year on lines of credit loans from the bank. And as I always explain, I explained this year to my family, I said, money is cheap. Not having the product for Christmas is expensive. And it's a situation right now just with low interest rates, and access to capital is more fluid right now. And so we will be running on lines of credit for significantly more of this year, because we're tying up, significantly much more dollars than we would at this time in inventory. But we know, because we've been doing this a long time, historically, Q4 is going to generate X variable, and we need to be ready for that. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, this is Jim. I think that all those things Dan talked about are true, but those costs compound one another. For instance, if we buy extra packaging and have to store it offsite, you have offsite storage costs. Or if you have to move those materials twice because you typically just have them come in once from the initial supplier and you use the material, if you've had to store them or stack them or use labor to stack them and unstack them, your costs are going up. And what we're seeing now is as Dan said, money's cheap, so you can get the money to buy them if they're available, but then you're adding other costs in the line if you have to store them or use the labor to move them twice, or all those things that add cost to the model. And while those may be individually not a lot, collectively they add up to a substantial amount. And so you have to be careful of that. And we've seen that. So in case of a material where we've had the ability to get that material and we've purchased more of them, and we found that having to store it off site costs us just as much as paying the upcharge of getting it just in time. So you have to weigh those things and pick what works best for you.
Thank you, Jim.
And I'd like to just piggyback both Dan and Jim. Our biggest challenge is, and Jim kind of alluded to this earlier, and Dan's touched on it, is anybody that has a program that's kind of a contractual or what's called a modular in retail, you pretty much have to supply that retailer or that customer, and you've got to hold that cost as best you can. Because again, they don't like changing price tags. They don't like changing the financial plan on any item. So that's kind of how we build ours out from a supply chain spend, is where we at in a full modular kind of contractual situation.
I'll throw one positive out there that COVID's brought. As everybody's moved to electronic menus in their restaurants, It gives you the ability and flexibility to change your pricing more often. And so typically, like most restaurants, we would print menus once a year, and you kind of live with that price through the ups and downs of material changes, which weren't as frequent. But you said, I'm not going back and printing new menus. Now that everybody is using their phones to pull up the menu for the restaurants, I mean, we are making price changes weekly. And those are really cost push adjustments. We're not trying to take more margin from consumers. You know, as Dan mentioned earlier, we hate adding price if we can't. You know, we want our consumers to pay a fair price for our items, but when the cost goes up to us, we have to reflect that in price modifications. And so we're able to do so through electronic menus in the restaurant pretty easily. And that's been one thing that's been super helpful in this COVID environment.
That's true, Jim. Good point. We have a couple other questions here in the chat. So this is from Jill. I apologize if this was covered as I joined the meeting late, but how will the shortages across the board change how we market to customers? And what do you think customers will demand as compensation for the customer service shortcomings, like late deliveries, increased retail cost, etc.?
You know, I'll jump in on this one first. I spent a lot of my career marketing, and I don't know if the marketing will change as much as people think it will. I think everybody's experienced this COVID situation, and everybody oddly is just more patient with things. You're willing to wait a little longer to get that package in the mail. You understand that the U.S. Postal Service may not deliver that, so you build in a little bit more time. And I think that when you tell consumers things aren't going to be what they had once were, they're going to understand that for a shorter period of time. You just have to keep pace with your competitors. If your competitors are doing something more unique and different, you're going to have to keep pace with them. Once somebody starts offering an additional service or an insight or something a little bit quicker, you're going to have to be there with them, or first to do that, or match them pretty quickly, because the consumers are going to switch knowing that somebody's offering something, a better value or some value added into that equation. So I would say, though, from a marketing perspective, I don't know if you have to make too many changes. You may have to decrease the product lines that you once offered. I think people now are kind of going to more core lines that they know are going to keep the lights on. And so they may not offer some of those specialty items that they had the extra time or money to do in the past, or they're going to go with their bread and butter type items. And those are the things I think you should focus on.
Yeah, I agree. We've had a unique situation, and we're a unique company where we can change our model of distribution to a lot of different channels. And so we're in the wholesale channel, we're in the retail channel, and we're into the online channel. Well, 2020, if we all remember what happened, every non-essential retailer had to close for several months, and that would include our own retail brick and mortar stores that we have here in St. Louis, whether they're Chocolate Company or the Bissinger's locations. And then on top of that, we sell in the slow season about 2,500 retailers. In the busy season, we sell about 5,000 retailers. Well, in that, there are some grocery store chains, but about 75% of those are the Bed Bath & Beyonds and the World Markets and the Home Goods, and all of those had to close and destroy the product eventually because it was expired. So we lost a major leg, our biggest leg of our distribution cycle in the middle of 2020. In fact, there was a day where I actually called the company main phone number and just to make sure the phones worked. However, what happened was, our retail stores are closed and our wholesale partners are closed as well. But in the same time period, our online business just kept growing and growing and growing by the second. The main Bissinger's online business, we doubled that volume in 1 year, and Bissinger's catalog has been a thing since the 70s. And so, the first 50 years of work, we doubled it in 1 year because the whole world went online and started shopping online. And we had the infrastructure and knowledge and computer system and customer service team and warehouse team and manufacturing all in place to pivot to that. So I understand that not all businesses are going to be able to pivot. You know, if you're a barber, you can't sell haircuts online, and I get that. But I think we all have to be very flexible into what is going to come into the future. And if you don't jump on these opportunities, that's where your business is going to be in trouble.
Thank you, Dan. We do have another question here. What is the most important thing we should be considering right now as it relates to the raw material supply? Are we still buying everything we can, or are we past that, Dan?
Buying everything we can.
Okay, that's still where we are. Derek, Jim, everybody, Mark? Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. But as Dan mentioned earlier, keeping those lines of communication open up with your suppliers is critically important. You gotta understand, for them, business isn't usual as either. And so just as that guy said to Dan, hey, buy everything you can, I think things are changing, and they're going to change throughout 21 and early 22. And having a good handle on what you can get and when you can get it is important. And so keeping those lines of communication open, understanding that their business isn't operating as usual either, and then just working with them very closely to ensure you have a steady supply of product is the way to go.
Great, thanks, Jim. So I think we are about 12 minutes out from wrapping up, and I wanted everybody, okay, there's one more question here. Hold on one second. Dan, we have another question for you. So I heard you say being prepared to pivot the business model to take advantage of the new realities and opportunities. How did you build your financial model to support that?
Every single day we walked in the building, we guessed. We literally said, I'm going to show up for work today, and what are they going to do? We had meetings where we guessed our way through 2020. We actually had a meeting with the whole company and said, listen, if you're used to making chocolate bars, we're not making chocolate bars probably for the next 3 weeks, which typically a day at the plant, we make 10,000 chocolate bars every single day. And so, we told that team, listen, we're going to be going, we have a demand right now for gift boxes that are going online. So we're going to be packing gift boxes. 2 days later, all of a sudden, we are selling more Mother's Day truffle boxes than, the last 5 years combined. In 1 week, we have demand. So we're going to pivot to that and start making truffles. And we pretty much just guessed our way through 2020. And ironically, and Jim was kind of mentioning this, the first few months, especially the Easter of 2020 and Mother's Day of 2020, from the, that's when all retail was still closed. They're calling us on the 800 number and says, oh, are you open? Yeah, yeah, we are. And can you ship me a box of candy? I can't go see my mother, but I really want to send her a Mother's Day gift. And we're saying, absolutely, we'll take care of you. And it was like, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys being there. I appreciate you guys doing it. But come August, it was like, why are you out of stock on this? It was like, well, wait a second. We're still in COVID, guys. It was very interesting how we only had a very short window of acceptance. And then it was like, I want everything now. And it's like, well, that's, it's great, but we, unfortunately, I can't get this product right now because this factory shut down. And so every single day of the week, it was a guessing game. And we got very lucky 95% of the time.
Thanks, Dan. I just wanted to give everybody a chance to kind of wrap up, talk about things you want to talk about for the next few minutes, give the audience some valuable information or something to leave them with. Mark Bowers, do you want to start off or ask some questions? Or?
So I'll start off, but I also have a question for the rest of the group. And maybe I could start off with that if we could roll briefly through that. How has this pandemic experience impacted your normal, regular strategic planning? By which I specifically mean, how has this affected acquisitions, potential acquisitions, new products that you normally would plan on developing and launching? Have you just put all of that on hold and freeze? Has this created opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't have seen or been able to participate in? What does this look like with the strategic issues of expansion? And even maybe take a look at and answer that with channels as well. I mean, has this created channel opportunities to get into retailers or to get into accounts that otherwise weren't accessible to you, or has this caused nothing but heartburn and constriction? I mean, maybe we could start with Dan and then go to Jim and Derek.
We bought Bissinger's in 2019, and my family's been involved with chocolate company now for 40 years since my parents started it. So we knew chocolate very well. We worked very hard to migrate Bissinger's into our world and learn the product and produce catalogs in 2019. And we expected 2020 to be our gangbuster year with the two brands could really thrive. We started in January, went into a big national trade show in San Francisco. And at the end of the show, there was all this chatter about this virus. And then, of course, the rest is history. So right away, at the show, we're meeting with major 300, 400, 500, 600 store chains that we met with to bring our product in. And as we start to follow up, everything shuttered. And so, that show and that investment completely was just gone. And we were blown away, and I mean blown away by how we did more dollars in 2020 than we did in 2019, and it went to the web category. And so we pushed that really hard. We had our marketing group push, our paid search campaign. We prospected more catalogs. And so once we saw that was the channel that was going to bring us revenue, we pushed it, and we spent more money on our marketing budget than we've ever have. And so we didn't just say, oh, this is great, let's continue. We tapped into that well as much as we could because we knew that the other channels were dying. On the flip side, we didn't expect those other channels to come back so quickly. And we complain about supply chain only because we're this blessed to be this busy. If we weren't busy and didn't have a product to sell, then who cares about supply chain? So supply chain constraints are a problem right now because we're so busy, and that is the blessing of 2021. I mean, we're so happy to be this busy, but I have absolutely turned down a lot of new business because I have, just 5 minutes before this call, I had a dream scenario where someone just emailed me and on the blue, and we know it's not going to work out because we're not bringing any new big customers on board this year because of the unknown. And what I've in the industry, the worst thing you can do is promise something that you can't deliver on, because the chocolate industry is tiny. And so, once you get, as a manufacturer for a contract manufacturing division, as a reputation of a contract manufacturer that cannot deliver as promised, it quickly spreads. And so I want to make sure that I don't hurt the integrity of the business that my other contract manufacturing customers are giving me now by bringing on new business. And so we are putting the brakes onto some new business opportunities that I would never have done before.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through this whole conversation without saying the new normal, but let's face it, there's a new normal. And as Dan said, our business is growing too, and we are spending money on new equipment to expand the growth of our business. And the one piece of the business that hasn't bounced back is the restaurant business. We lost over $1 million in revenue on that piece of business alone in 2019 or 2020 from COVID, and that business is slowly coming back. It's on the move in the right direction, which is good news, but we just don't know when that will fully recover or if it will fully recover. So as Dan mentioned too, we're looking for new ways to change that business up so that it becomes a great center for us again. But I think the things that we're open to more. Nobody likes surprises, right? Everybody in the manufacturing world hates surprises. Well, we had a year full of surprises, so we're a little bit more aware that those things can happen, and just planning our businesses with surprises in mind. And I think over time, as we get confidence back and we have less surprises, we will start getting back to doing business as normal. Until then, we all have our guards up. We're all doing things to mitigate risk, and out of stocks and doing the things we need to do to keep our businesses moving and flowing without any stoppages from supply chain.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Derek, I have nothing to add, and I'm looking at the clock here, so I'll give the remaining minutes to Derek, and I'll thank everyone, remind everyone that's listening to join us tomorrow night at O'Fallon Brewery in Westport, 5:30. Look forward to seeing everyone there. Appreciate Jim hosting us, and Derek, let you maybe close us out with that comment.
Yeah, no, similar to Dan and Jim, we did make an acquisition in kind of the peak COVID, somewhat accidentally from the timing. But it was an interesting one where we basically just had them load up a bunch of trucks from Seattle area. It was about kind of height of the pandemic, and we just received a bunch of tractor trailers full of equipment and inventory, and we've kind of turned that into a line extension. So, I mean, we're not looking at making a monumental shift in the business, but we are looking at significantly complementary items and goods. And again, capital expenditures and investment has been top of mind and will continue to be so. So appreciate everybody joining us, and hopefully we can see everybody at Jim's place tomorrow.
Likewise. Any closing thoughts, Marianne?
Oh yeah. Always, we have to talk about our next one here in a month. So let's see, guys. We've got, first of all, I want to thank all the sponsors. Looks like we're wrapping up here. We hope you found value in the panel. We welcome all of your feedback. Thank you to all the sponsors: Enterprise Bank, Schmershel Treloar and Company, Spoke Marketing, St. Louis Makes, Carmody McDonald. And you can find all of all the speakers today on LinkedIn, and they'll be happy to connect with you. It's been an honor to be your moderator. Please check out our screen for contact info as well. And on behalf of all of us at the Earning Curve, thank you, and we will see you back here in 1 month. We're still on our summer schedule, so join us July 13th for another great panel when we're going to discuss aligning marketing and sales for the revenue impact. And have a great day. See you all next time, and hopefully at the brewery, at Jim's Brewery, O'Fallon Brewery tomorrow, like Mark said, for St. Louis Makes. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.